Well, we're all here. I may as well start. May as well start the live stream. The live stream. And I am using the right mic this time. I'm 99% sure I'm using the live mic. How does it sound? Does it sound like I'm using an actual professional mic or a crappy webcam? Let's see. Let's find out. Let's see. Right here. Yes, microphone H2N. That's the good one. And hang on a second, because I'm also not seeing. Oh, hang on. Yeah, if I were more professional, this wouldn't be happening. Hold on. Where is the? Where's the live? Hang on. Live dashboard. There we go. Oh, there we go. There's the comments window as well. Definitely want to make sure that you guys, it's getting recorded as part of the live stream. Don't worry. None of this is actually going over. There we go. Oh, perfect. Hey, welcome to the live stream. I'm back. I'm live streaming some more, and I'm live streaming some more because I have so many of these to do, and I didn't get hardly any of them done last. I got like 5 of them done last time, so I'm gonna really go out of my way to focus on the black box log responses in this live stream. And that means I'm going to be paying less attention to your chat and answering fewer off the cuff questions. Hold on one second. Make a mic noise here for a minute. If you know me personally, or if you watch my channel, you probably could guess that I could just sit here and shoot the breeze with you about anything for a long time. I used to be an instructor, a corporate classroom instruction. And one of the exercises you do as an instructor, as you're learning to do that, is you just pick a topic and then you just improvise on the topic. Just start spouting random facts about it confidently for as long as you can. And I was very good at that. So, but I'm going to try and rein it in and do the video responses. Yeah, let's see. Sounds good. Check the chat briefly here. Yes, I'm flying tri-blades now. But for those of you who are like 50-40, I missed the punch. That's because I'm flying on 2700 kV motors. When I fly 50-40 on 2300 kV motors, I also agree that they lack punch and I wouldn't use them. So I would go for something with a little more aggressive blade profile on 2300 kV. There you go. Okay, let's dive right in and let's start working through these video responses and try and get some actual black boxing done. Okay. We're going to start with this one from KF6BBL. I assume that is your ham number. So there you go. Another ham out there. For those of you who are not ham licensed, you really should be if you're flying FPV. If you're in the United States, other countries have different rules. And if you're not, you're technically breaking the rules. And speaking of rules, we've also got this new Part 107 thing coming out. What's up with that? I'm trying to get my brain around that, and hopefully I'll have some content for you about that in the future. But it seems like right now there's so much misinformation and lack of information about Part 107 that I kind of am hesitant to wade in and say something wrong. So I'd rather say nothing than say something wrong. Mostly. Sometimes I don't feel that way. Let's get this one downloading. And we'll get the CLI and the black box log downloading. Download. And hold on. Clear out my downloads folder. Okay, yeah, no, nothing embarrassing in there. And get my downloads folder up in another window so I can be managing that. So that's coming down. I did get some more time on the Alien, and I know you guys are very anxious to see that content, and I'm anxious to get it to you, but I definitely don't want to rush it. One of the criticisms I got from my last video, which was about KISS, which was never intended to be anything like in depth, but people pointed out that they felt I had a little bit of responsibility as a reviewer to be a little more thorough. So what I'm intending to do with the KISS Alien, though, is I'm going to fly it enough that I feel like I've got a grasp on how it flies and how it tunes. and then I'm going to switch it over to Betaflight, because you can install Betaflight 3.0 on the KISS board, and I'm going to take the exact same copter and fly it with KISS and Betaflight and try and do a comparison. And I am fully prepared for the avalanche of complaints. If I come out and I say that, oh no, I liked Betaflight better, I'm fully prepared for all the KISS guys to get all up in my stuff. Although, so I heard a rumor that KISS is losing steam. I heard a rumor that people are sort of abandoning the KISS ship. Now, I heard that rumor on the Raceflight Slack, so you can take it with a grain of salt. But is it true that KISS boards people are moving off of KISS, and people's KISS boards used to be out of stock all the time, and now people are selling them, and et cetera, et cetera? I don't know. Yeah, Robert Baltrish, I think Part 107 is only for those flying commercially. Well, that's one of the things I've heard people argue about, so I don't know the answer to that. Is it or isn't it? Also, Part 107, the AMA has their opinion, but the AMA's opinion, and I have respect for the AMA and what they've done, but I also feel like the AMA has really dropped the ball in some sense when it comes to multi-rotors, drone racing, etc. They were really slow. They were really focused, in my opinion, they were really focused on their traditional market, which is fixed-wing RC flyers. And they really were slow to come up to speed on mini quads, quadcopters in general, drone racing, especially FPV, especially. And I feel like AMA is always, their stuff always has an undertone of, well, just join the AMA and shut up and you'll be fine. And so fine. So they're watching out for themselves and their members, and that's exactly what they have a responsibility to do. But if the answer to your situation is, I don't want to join the AMA, then they're not really helpful to you. So I take everything the AMA says with a grain of salt. They want to be they're not interested in helping create a generally healthy and flourishing RF environment. They're interested in creating their sandbox and having everyone get in their sandbox. That's, if I could be a little bit brusque, that's what I would say about the AMA. And if there's things that don't fit into their sandbox, they're not helpful. And the thing that I sort of object to is I have a vague feeling that the AMA is kind of interested in closing off the sandbox. They're interested in throwing everybody else under the bus if you don't fit in their sandbox. So that's just a sense that I have. I can't. But hey, what the heck? We're here on a live stream. You know, I'll just BS. The chat's still here. Okay, let's bring this sucker up. Have we got a sync? Have we got a video sync? We do not seem to have a video sync. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to sync the video up. I got to unzip this. No, I got to unzip it. And I'm going to sync it up, and I'm going to put my earphones on here real quick. Let's go. Interesting. Wonder what kind of ESCs you're running. That didn't sound like, sounded like a kind of a gradual spin up. Let's set the playback speed a little faster so we can get to the arming. Or the takeoff anyway. Okay, so here's the flying. We're not getting an arming beep. It makes me wonder if perhaps, maybe you just don't have a buzzer, but also maybe you're flying with motor stop enabled and you've been armed this whole time. If you fly with motor stop enabled, my preference is strongly to fly with motor stop disabled. I feel like anytime the copter is armed, I want the motors to be spinning. I do not want there to be any ambiguity about whether the copter is armed. The prop spinning should be a great big red flag for me and a spectator, and anybody sees those props moving, they should know that they should stay back from the copter, but myself especially. I hate the idea that the copter can be armed and just waiting for me to bump the throttle the tiniest bit for the props to spin up. Other people don't feel that way and argue that they feel like motor stop is safer. I disagree, and it's my live stream, so we'll just take my opinion on it. But that's my 2 cents about that. Let's find the point where now at slow speed, 50% is as slow as you can go and still have audio in the Blackbox player. At least that's how it's always been. Maybe the new one is different. So now let's listen for the moment when you bump the throttle. Okay, we'll go back a little further. Okay, we'll call that the point where you throttle up. And now I'm going to start the log here, but in reality, the log, it does not start there. So I'm going to try and find the throttle up point and bump. Now, one of the things, and I think this is a bug in the Betaflight Blackbox viewer, notice that if I watch what happens when I move the log start point. Ready? I'm going to start moving it. So you see how the screen isn't updating? But if I touch it and drag it, then it updates. So that's, I think, a bug. Let's see how I've done. No, you can hear the motor spooling up, but you see that the throttle is not rising. So I'm going to keep bumping it back until I get to the point where it's sort of synced up. There you go. So now I can see the throttle has started to rise. Let's try again. So there, I think I've overshot a little bit, because here's the arming beep, and here's where the motor starts spinning. But I heard the motor start spinning before that happened. Let's try it. So I think I'm still a little bit off. Let's see. No, I'm still a little bit off. Sorry you guys are having maybe this is good instruction for people who are trying to learn to sync up. It's really the best if you have a buzzer. If you have a buzzer, then you just line up the beep with this line and you're good to go. If you don't have a buzzer, then this is a little bit of a hassle. So am I early or late? I think I am late. I think I need to go this way. Let's see how close I've gotten. No. I've gone too far. I need to go this way. Yeah, still. Yep, this is why y'all should provide me with a log sync. So... No. Closer. Closer. We're getting there. We're almost there. The most exciting live stream in the world. No, see? Now I've gone too far. Almost. Oh, very close. So now I'm going to use this throttle punch. He does a little throttle punch here. I'm going to use that to get it dialed in a little closer. That was pretty close. Do you see that was pretty close? No. This doesn't look right at all. I'm not even sure this is the right log. Now I'm not even sure this is the right log. The sticks aren't really even doing. Yes, exactly. Tommy, that's a great point. If you don't have a buzzer, give the throttle a couple blips. Just go bzz, 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 bzz. Some people also twitch their yaw stick, because that's not going to make the copter lift off or activate air mode. So if you just take the yaw stick and go digga, 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 you can kind of sync it up. I'm not even sure this is the right log, though, because if we look, I might be off a little bit in terms of the sync, but watch. Left turn, wiggle in the yaw stick, right turn. I don't know. Let's just analyze them. If I got the wrong, maybe it's this one. Maybe it's this one. Hang on. This is the exciting... Oh, there we go. That's the right log. I'm still a little bit off on the sync, but but I'm not going to stress about it. Let's get to the analysis, shall we? Yeah, exactly, Robert. You're 100% right. It wasn't the right log. The sticks weren't. I mean, you start with the sync by listening to the throttle. I find that listening to the throttle while watching the yaw stick, I mean, the throttle noise is very easy for me to sort of lock into audibly, and that's a good way to get the sync correct. But then you can just see that the copter is moving left, right, and the sticks just are not doing that. So it clearly was not correct. Our sync is not perfect right now, but let's just get on with our lives and see what we can come up with. Instability during low or zero throttle. Okay, so if you have instability during low or zero throttle, the first thing to do is to activate air mode. If you're not using air mode, I think you should be using air mode. The only people I think who perhaps might not want air mode, maybe if you're, like, let's say you're a racer and you've just always got your throttle up and you don't like the effect that air mode has at low throttle, especially when landing. Some people find it hard to land with air mode turned on. But I feel like anytime you're flying, you're going to potentially be lowering the throttle. Even if you're a racer, you're going to kind of chop the throttle as you go into a turn maybe or something. And the difference, if you don't believe in air mode, do this. Put air mode on a switch. Go up to 50 or 100 feet perhaps. Cut the throttle down to low. Don't even take it all the way to 0 if you don't want to, but just lower the throttle, or take it to 0 if you want to, and watch how the copter falls and tumbles, and then turn air mode on or off, put it the other way, and look at the difference. The difference in authority is amazing. So I have air mode on all the time, and I recommend that you do as well. If you have trouble landing with air mode, number one, you put air mode on a switch, and you can turn it off just before you land. But then the other thing you can do is you can, well, to be really blunt and rude, but hey, it's a live stream. Let's just, let's take our shirts off. Not literally. To be really blunt, if you have trouble landing in air mode, then you need to learn to land better. No offense. If you have stick arming, that's your big problem. The problem with stick arming is that it takes so long to drop the stick and push to the left with the yaw, and then it doesn't disarm immediately. It waits like a half a second, not quite even that long, but it doesn't land immediately. So if you're trying to land with stick arming and you have air mode, that's why. That's your problem. That's not you. That's not your technique. It's very hard to land with stick arming in air modes. But it's 2016 and we all have 6 or 8 channel receivers. Even the $45 FlySky FSI 6 has a 6-channel receiver, and it does S-Bus, or it's called I-Bus, but it's a series. So there's just very little reason in this day and age for anyone to be using stick arming, in my humble opinion. If you're an old-time pilot and you've done it forever, I understand that your muscle memory doesn't really work that way, and it's going to be hard and potentially a safety issue for you to retrain yourself, and so I respect that. But if you're a new pilot starting out, don't stick arm, switch arm. And what that means is that when you're ready to land, you just take the radio, and as you bring the throttle down to finish your landing, boop, you flip the switch, you're disarmed, you're done. And what you can do is you can flip that switch when you're a half inch off the ground, or you can flip it just as you touch down, and it's not a big deal. So if you're having trouble with landing in air mode, in my opinion, you need to work on your landing technique, and that may involve switching to stick arm. Oops, sorry, that's confusing. That may involve changing over to switch arming if you're stick arming. But if you're already switch arming and you're still having trouble, chances are you just need a little more finesse. And the exercise that I suggest for that is that hover. If you can't hover, learn to hover. Now you got to hover. You've got a perfect hover, right? Just dead perfect. Now reduce the throttle the tiniest bit and begin a very slow descent, the slowest descent you possibly can. And what you'll notice is that as the copter gets close to the ground, it'll enter ground effect and it will stop descending. At this point, you know that you're 2 inches off the ground. You may now choose, and you could just sit there with the throttle right there, and the copter will just kind of bobble in ground effect and not land. At that point, you can either cut the throttle, flip the switch, and disarm, or you could just disarm with the switch and let it fall. Or if you're really good, you could lower it a little bit more and let the copter settle and disarm. And that's just a matter of technique. Okay, so that's my little 2 cents about air mode and landing, but you're already in air mode. So then why do you have instability during low or zero throttle? Another thing that it could be is that your min throttle is too low and a motor is going below, it's stopping. And that will manifest as a sudden dip of an arm. The copter will go woof, and catch itself. I've experienced that in one of my copters where I went from one shot to multi-shot, and when you go from one shot to multi-shot, you often have to raise min throttle. Why is that? I don't know, but that's how it often is. When you go, and so my min throttle was too low. I did this big punch out over the trees, and I flipped over and I was falling backwards. And, pardon me, somewhere halfway through that fall, an arm sagged. Or you're flying and you're going to do a sharp pylon turn, and you kind of chop the throttle and you yank into the turn, and when you do it, the copter goes zoom, and an arm dips. That's min throttle too low. Okay, so that's a very specific kind of instability. Peter, you cannot change the timestamps on the flight on the SD card for Blackbox, and the reason is that neither OpenLog nor the flight controller has a real-time clock. They don't know what date or what the date or time is. My preference in a perfect world would be to incorporate a real-time clock into the flight controller, so that the flight controller could then tell the OpenLog what the date and time was. The problem with that is that it would require a battery, like one of those little coin cells or a button cell, and it would require an additional chip, and there's just not that much room on these boards to do that. So there you go. The next best thing, I mean, if you're not going to get timestamps, pardon me, the next best thing would be, I have an idea that at the beginning of the log, or at the beginning of when you arm the copter, instead of going beep beep like it does, maybe it could go like a semi-random beep pattern, beep 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 beep, right? And then the Blackbox viewer could search through a whole directory and find the log with the matching beep pattern in it. I don't know. That's my fantasy. Maybe somebody will implement that. Anyway. All right, so there's my little 2 cents about that instability. You could also have just low P gain or low I gain. All right. Let's go ahead, now that I've sort of talked about that, let's go ahead and take a look at your actual log. And what I'm going to do first is I'm going to take a look just at your flight video. And let's just see what we see. And then we'll take a look at your Blackbox log. Oh, and I don't think I need to be getting Outlook messages. Hold on, let me kill that. Yeah, I see a little bit of wobbliness in the turns. One of the things I look for as a sign of a good tune is when you do a sharp turn, do you get any sort of rolling out of the turn? I call it wallowing out of the turn a little bit. Or when you do a sharp turn, does the copter track smoothly through the turn, or does it kind of go like that? A good tune will not do that. Let's keep watching. Yeah, I see this wobbling here. This wobbling here as you drop the throttle feels like prop wash oscillation to me. That feels a little, that's very interesting. It feels like it could be prop wash oscillation, and for those, I assume that everybody knows what prop wash oscillation is, but that may not necessarily be true. The prop wash oscillation occurs when the copter is falling into its own prop wash. So the props are spinning, and that makes turbulent air. And as the copter falls, it falls into the turbulent air from the props. And that's true even when the props are at idle, right? When they're not moving very fast. Prop wash oscillation also occurs when you do a very sharp turn, because the copter is sort of sliding backwards into its own prop wash, okay? And the wobbling is a D-term thing. The interesting thing is that, you know, I watched Skitzo's vlog on tuning, and it's one of the best, most concise summaries of how to tune that I've ever seen. So I'm super impressed with Skitzo. There's a lot of people out there who are great tuners, but maybe have a little bit of hard time expressing their methodology, and he did a fantastic job of expressing his methodology. But one of the things he said that I disagree with a little bit, and I think I agree with him underneath, but maybe I disagree with the way he said it, is he said that you know your D gain should be as low as possible, that the purpose of the D term is just to pick up error. And if your P terms are perfect, then you won't need the D term. Now here's where he was right. Where he was right is that if you had a perfect PID controller with a perfect system, then only P would be necessary, perhaps I, but D might not be necessary, because the P term would always be correcting the error perfectly, and the D, therefore you would never have any leftover error for the I or the D to be needed. But in the real world, we never have a perfect system. So by raising the P to a certain point, we can minimize the need for excess I and D, but you're still going to need some I and D, and I disagree that you want D as low as possible. I do agree that if D is too high, then you get bad things. You're not going to want to just pile on the D, but you're not going to want to pile on the P either. So the interesting thing is that the D term, if you think about PID, P you can summarize as P is looking at the present, I is looking at the past, and D is looking at the future. Okay? And Bruce from RC Model Reviews, his video on a PID controller, he introduced those concepts. It's the first time I've seen them widely expressed. Although if you think about the PID controller, that's sort of a mathematical concept. That's not that he didn't invent that. But watch Bruce's video on what is a PID controller and what does it do if you want to hear more about that. Because D is the one that's looking at the future, D is the only one that can actually deal with very rapidly changing situations like prop wash. Because there's a delay between the time when the P term tells the motors what to do and the motors actually do it and affect the thrust output of the copter. Which means that there's a limit to how fast the P term can respond to a given situation. And if the situation is changing faster than that, then the P term cannot address the situation. And that's why if you raise the P term too high, you get P term oscillation, because the P term is pushing the motors to go faster and slower, but the actual response of the system is too slow and they get out of sync, and the P term is actually sort of, making it worse rather than better. Whereas with the D term can anticipate, in a sense, what is going to be needed in the future. And so only the D term can respond quickly enough and with enough foresight to deal with prop wash. You cannot, given the systems that we have today, you cannot deal with prop wash without the D term. And so you have to raise the D gain if you're getting prop wash and you want to get rid of it. There isn't any other way to deal with it. If we had a hyper-responsive system, a motor that could change the prop speed very, very quickly, and a PID controller that was getting data from the gyro with very, very little latency, in theory, a P-only controller could deal with prop wash, but the controllers that we have today, at least the ones I fly, here come the race flight guys saying, we can do it, good for you, I don't know. But at least the ones I fly today can't do it without the D gain. Okay, so that's a little bit about prop wash and D gain and so forth. So let's take a look now at, we'll look at the roll axis first, because roll is usually where these kinds of things happen. And let's go for no smoothing. Let's see the raw data. And let's look at what's happening here during these throttle punch and fall scenarios where we get this wobble. Let me see if I can just get it synced just a little better. So I think it's a little late. We're going to bump the log a little earlier. No, I went the wrong way. Sorry. That's much better. So as the throttle is lowered, the motors, look how this motor actually stops. Does the wobble correspond there? Yeah. What's your min throttle? Let's look at the motors. So we see this motor is going to min, and it is at, give me the value. Where's the actual value? Motor, oh, so that's not motor 4. That's motor 1 is at 0, and it's at 1035. 1035, depending on what your calibration is at, it's possible that's too low, and you're getting a little bit of motor stoppage here. That certainly would cause that. I can't say for sure. The other thing we can think about is You know, is the P-term response strong enough? So in a situation like this where you're at low throttle and we're falling, yeah, I hear the motors. Listen to the motors. You hear the motors kind of going. No, but you are even if you're moving forward, you're still falling into. You could debate the exact thing that's happening, but we say you experience it even when you're moving forward. You do experience it. When you're at low throttle and you're falling, you experience the we call it prop wash oscillation. If it's not literally falling into your own prop wash, then it's something like that. The D term has these high frequency oscillations here, but the magnitude is pretty low. And usually in my experience, what I think this is, pardon me, what I think this is at low throttle, you're getting some lower frequency components coming out, but because the magnitude is so low, it's not an issue. It's not indicative of excess D gain. It's just a sort of a let's look at the spectrum. Well, they took away the ability to have the spectrum just show the window, unfortunately. So we can't see the spectrum just for this little area. That's too bad. It'd be nice to have that back as an option. Yeah, so I don't think these D-term oscillations we're seeing here are an issue. They only happen at low throttle. They don't have very high magnitude. I don't think that's a problem. Let's take a look at the actual values. Where's the, what is your, hang on. Let's look at your CLI dump. This must be an earlier version of Betaflight. Oh my God, you're flying 253. Okay, well, I'm a little disinclined to do too much effort trying to help you tune 253. I'm still going to help you, but I have to tell you, if you're flying, 261, 253, like so much has changed. My suggestion would be upgrade to 3.0. That's my biggest suggestion. But let's see what we can do for you. P of 50. No, sorry, that's not right. Rewrite. P of 61, D of 30. Roll is 45, D of 27. Your I gains are not ultra high, but it doesn't look like you're having I term issues where the copter is tumbling. It's more of a sort of a bobbling, if you will. In general, to fix that, your P gains are certainly high enough that it's not low P. So in general, to fix this kind of thing, I think I would raise D. But I would, of course, always be watching for hot motors. Anytime I'm raising D, I would fly carefully and look for hot motors. Instability after hard rolls and pitches. Let's see if we can find one of those. You see, you're getting the instability right there, too, though. That's not prop wash. Look, you see it right here as well. See, I think this feels like your motors are having an issue. Like the copter is having some issue translating the PID loop into the real world. See, that's not prop wash. That kind of shake that you see there, that is high P gain. Watch it again. We'll watch it actually in 50% speed. Notice that there's kind of, it's not just one soft bounce, but it's kind of multiple bounces. See how there were like almost 2 or 3 bounces there? That's high P gain. And again, you could either tune that by reducing P gain or by raising D gain. See, what was that little shimmer there? Shutter there. What was that? The copter's not falling. The copter's not falling. What was that? That little glitch there. Something ain't right. All right, so we're gonna wrap this one up. Did he bounce his stick? That certainly will point to something. Yeah. We're going to wrap this one up. If I had to give you a single tuning suggestion, it would be to raise D gain, but as always, watch for hot motors. If you don't have enough filtering or if you have something out of balance, you should definitely, you'll overheat your motors if you get the D gain too high. let's just take a quick look at your gyros and zoom out. Your gyros are clean. The lines are very, very thin. Let's see what your filtering is. Do we have gyro LPF back then? Gyro LPF is off. Gyro soft LPF is 60. Certainly, you could improve your copter's performance by raising gyro soft LPF. It can go as high as 90 or 100. You'll get less latency in the PID loop. You'll also get more noise, but your lines are so clean anyway that the noise probably won't matter. Hang on, let's just make sure. I should really look at it without smoothing before I make any. No, see, even without smoothing, these are super thin lines. So what I would suggest is that you raise gyrosoft LPF to 90 or 100 even, and make that change. Don't change anything else. Fly for 30 seconds, do a couple of good punches, come back, land, check your motor temperatures. If your motors are too hot to touch comfortably, like if the motors are hot enough that you're like, oh, that's a little warm, that's okay. But if your motors are hot and you're like, oh, ow, 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 that's too hot. That's a good rule of thumb. Get it? Then you got to drop it back down or lower your D gains. But I think you'll be fine. So raise that and then start working up your D gains. But there's enough going on here that I wonder if maybe your flight controller is loose or something, because those little glitches sometimes don't seem to correspond to anything that I can think of that would cause a tuning issue. And it does make me wonder if you need to give your copter a once-over to look for a cracked frame plate or a broken standoff for your flight controller or something like that. And upgrade to Betaflight 3.0. Get with the program. 251. 251 isn't even just upgrade to 261 or 271 will be a big improvement. 251 was not the best Betaflight. Horus had said so himself. So that's my insight. And let's go on to the next one. You can use the S key to turn off smoothing. Oh, thank you. That's a good tip. I appreciate that. Okay, well, that was only a half hour on that one. I'm sure we're going to get through a ton of these. I took the day off work today so I could do a live stream and a few other things as well. I'm going to try and get through these, but I just go on and on. See, I didn't even start off talking about BS products, my battery testing that I'm doing. Any of that stuff. I didn't, I just went right into it, and I still talked for a half hour about that one. I'm sure that guy appreciates it, but everybody else on the list is like, dude, it's been 3 weeks. Can you get to my freaking thing? Oh well, that's life. We've got a little 4-inch copter here. Config dump, Blackbox log, video. Let's get the video. Craig, request provided what? Space Dog, I'd love to be in an episode of Rotor Riot. Sure, who wouldn't, right? And I've had a lot of fun conversations with Final Glide on the internet once or twice. He seems like a fun person. And I talked to Steele briefly, but it was all business, talking about tuning. Yeah, sure. I wish those guys would come fly at my house. I mean, it's just a completely selfish, but like I fly at my house so much that like I'd love to see what like one of them would make of my little FPV playground, you know? And the other thought that I had this idea was I would love to do I would call this bit home field advantage, and here's what I want to do. I'm going to set out a track on my property. Of course, I fly it all the time, right? So I know the property. I could fly it practically blindfolded. I'm going to let them walk the track, right? They're not even going to see FPV video. They can walk the track. They get no practice flights. And then we race. And we see if my home field advantage makes up for the fact that they're much, much better pilots than I am. That was the thought that I had for a cool bit to do if I was ever on it. Because, of course, I sit around all day thinking, what if I was on Rotor Riot? Yeah, anyway. I think that would be a fun thing. Who's promoting their channel? Oh, man. Thank you for pointing that out. Timeout. User is in timeout. Goodbye. None of that. Yeah, I think that would be fun. And then the great thing about it is if I win, they can be like, yeah, well, dude, of course you won. You fly this 100 times, and we've never flown it. Of course, you stack the deck. But then if I lose, it could be like, yeah, we don't even need to practice. We're so much better. So it'd be kind of fun. Okay. Let's see. We got video here. And I need to get rid of, let's see, this is MP2 OGG, and we'll kill that stuff, and I will download the Blackbox, and we'll open it up, and we got the video, and do we have a log sync? No log sync. Okay, I'm gonna have to do it myself. And he says, warning, it starts off loud, so I've got my audio turned down. Peter, you are not in timeout. If you're getting connection to server lost or something, just reload the page. You should be fine. The live stream is green. It looks good. I should put that in the upper left. Oh, wait, no, that wouldn't work. If you're losing a live stream, you can't see the live stream indicator in the upper left. Let me see what I can do about getting this synced up. Or well, it may be. Yeah, no, it's not quite synced. That's a shame. It's almost synced. Let's use this flip to do the sync. So what I'm going to do is, here comes the flip. Okay, now I'm going to move that, and this again is a place where the Betaflight configurator bug really matters, because what I want to do is I want to just watch the stick move as I move the log sync point, but I can't do that. So let's watch this again. Extreme stick movements like this flip are great for getting sync right. See how the copter starts to move just as the stick starts to move? That's pretty close to correct. Yeah, that's pretty close to correct. Now let's watch the return to center. Yeah, it seems about right. The sound is horrible. Okay, now that we've got it synced. He did say it? Oh, I'm sorry if I messed up. Where does he say it? I think it starts at minus 0.4. Oh, I see. Oh, well, you're right. I missed that. What did I come up with? 333? Well, it's pretty close. Sorry. Yeah, the audio is horrible. But I don't know what it is. Though, you know what it is? It's the FPV feed. This is an FPV audio feed from an onboard mic. This is not an HD cam. That's why the audio is horrible. You better be glad I've got the output turned down, though. Okay, general tuning request. All right, let's take a look. Let's start by just looking at the flight video, and then we'll look at the black box and see what we can see. The copter looks really responsive to the sticks. Even those little moves where he's going and adjusting it, it's very sort of, it's not going right? It's stopping and starting crisply, even on those little stick movements. This goes back to what Skitzo was talking about in his tuning video. So that's good. Yeah, this guy's a really twitchy pilot. You can see he did a sort of a stutter stop roll there. And again, the copter starts and stops are very crisp. Again, let's watch it at maybe half speed. And let me turn the audio off as well, so you guys don't have to hear it. But yeah, it's pretty locked in. This tune is pretty good so far. The yaw move there. Hard to tell what's going on here. Seems like you're having a little bit of trouble coordinating your turns, but I think that's just because you're being a kind of a crazy monkey on the sticks and not really paying a lot of attention to it. I don't think that's a tuning issue. High throttle. Let's see if we got any oscillations at high throttle. Let's pull the gyros in now. And I'll zoom all the way out, and we'll use the S key to get rid of smoothing. Oh, I love it. Very good. Very good. Here at high throttle, we don't see any signs of oscillation, but if you look here, look at the yaw line, the yellow line right here. we can see that this is you're getting some oscillations on the yaw axis for sure. You see how the line here is sort of one sort of smooth, thick line, not too thick, but one sort of thick line, and here it's getting all sort of jaggy, right? That's some kind of oscillation coming out on the yaw axis. What is making this? Is that happening whenever you go to high throttle? There's high throttle, low throttle. So it's happening when you're going to high throttle, it looks like. Is it every time? Here's another high. Right down here, it shows the throttle. This little topology here is topography is the throttle. So we can see, yeah. So every time you're going to high throttle, we're getting this oscillation. Is it just, it's not just on the yaw axis though. It's really all the axes, but it's worse on the yaw axis. So let's look at the yaw axis. And it's the P term on yaw is going bonkers, right? So your yaw P gain may be too high, but no. Betaflight 290 lux float yaw P gain is 7.3. That's not a particularly high value. The P term is not usually super responsive to gyro noise. Possibly you could address this. Well, this may be you may have like a dirty motor, an out of balance motor or prop that's doing this. Do you have a yaw filter? Your yaw filter's at 80. Potentially you could reduce the yaw filter a little bit to clean this up. This is probably not having a super big flight effect, but it doesn't look good in the logs, does it? You could lower your yaw P gain, but that's not ideal because that makes the copter handle really badly. You could also use TPA. This might be the kind of situation where TPA is ideal. You've got a TPA of 20 and 1650. Maybe you could try bumping that up a little bit. Adam, what did you do to fix that with BLHeli-S? Yes, Brandon, it's always a good idea yeah, if you're going to be tuning, and you should definitely put a fresh set of props on. Otherwise, you're not really. The answer will be, well, you need to put a fresh set of props on, and you sort of wasted the time. Nanomex, I do not tune differently for a GoPro on or off. The difference is not that big. So the difference is not that big. There is a small difference. Lower P for yaw. Yeah, Adam, but the problem I have with that is that if yaw P is too low, the copter turns really badly. It's really hard to get it to track well through a turn. On the other hand, this is only happening really at like look when it comes in. It's coming in around 1800 throttle, so maybe it's not that big a deal. So maybe the thing to do, this is just a thought, is raise the TPA breakpoint to something like maybe 1700 or 1750, and then raise TPA to a more extreme value. But it will only come in at the higher values, and that might deal with this. You could also try adding some yaw filtering. Is it only happening on yaw? Let's take a look at roll. We'll turn off smoothing. Oh, ugh. Well, here could be a problem too. This D term is super noisy here. Look at the D. Look at all these. How the D term is just spiking like crazy with high frequency stuff. So that's not ideal, and we're also, frankly, seeing the P term pretty active as well. See how the P term is going up and down. It's not quite into hard-on oscillations. He said hard-on. But it is. It's definitely very, very active. So I think the whole copter could use maybe a little TPA starting. You really need it to start before 1800 because 1800 is where your problems start happening. So if your TPA breakpoint is like 1800, you'll only start to get reduction at 1800. So if you're having your problems at 1800, you need to start the reduction at 1750 or 1700. But I think maybe some TPA could help solve this, and that would be my suggestion. The copter's tune overall looks very good. The crispness and smoothness at the same time of the stops, both in your rolls and flips, and also in those little twitchy motions you're doing. That's a well-tuned copter, very sharply tuned copter. I like it. Adam, you think TPA is the problem? Like he needs less TPA or more? I think TPA is the solution. Interesting. Borg, you had a problem with the Betaflight anti-skip. Is that the max DPS that you're talking about? Oh, you do think, Adam, you think it's the answer. I agree. I don't change my rates with the GoPro at all. Yeah, I would give TPA a try. Okay, great. We'll knock that one out. Adam, thank you for your submission. Well-tuned copter. Whoever tuned that copter for you did a pretty good job. So you can tell them I said so. Jesus, 300 grams. That's not all up, right? 300 has to be without a battery, right? If you're at 300 grams all up, I'm super impressed. Anyway, let's go to the next one. That was 2085. Let's do 2090. Peter, Cleanflight. Well, here's the thing, Peter. The Cleanflight is the right tool for some people who don't want to deal with all the nonsense that Betaflight brings to the table. Betaflight gives you a lot more knobs and bells and buzzers and whistles, and it's just different. There's a learning curve. If you've been on Cleanflight forever, going to Betaflight is going to challenge you because there's new stuff to learn, and you may not enjoy that experience. That being said, there is no question at all that Betaflight, even an older version of Betaflight like 271, flies better than Cleanflight. No question. The default Betaflight PIDs will fly better on most copters than the Cleanflight, and the tunability of Betaflight is way higher. The default Betaflight tune is better than the default Cleanflight tune on most copters, I think, and the best possible Betaflight tune is way better than the best possible Cleanflight tune, especially if you have some kind of problem like vibration prone props or something like that Cleanflight just doesn't have the tools to solve. Thanks, Adam. Here's what I say about Betaflight. If you're scared of going to Betaflight, Betaflight has all these extra options, and you're like, what do they all do? Just leave them at the defaults. Boris, I think, does a great job of making sure that most of the time the defaults work really well for most people. So if you don't know what the p-term set point weight is, and if you don't know, you can watch my video about it, and I'll tell you. But if you're overwhelmed by all this new stuff, just leave it at the defaults. Don't touch it, and you probably will still get a very good flying experience. Let's get these downloads started here. Yeah, TPA, the problem is that once you get above a certain throttle point, you can get so much vibration from the motors that the PIDs are wrong. The PIDs that are right at low throttle and mid throttle can be excessive at high throttle because there's so much vibration. You would need to turn down the P gain and the D gain especially. So TPA does that. You say above a certain throttle point, start ramping down the PIDs essentially. And I have a video on TPA. If you search my channel for TPA, you will find it. TPA. Let's see how that works. Yeah, right there. There it is. It says on Cleanflight, but don't worry, it's the same in Betaflight. Nothing's changed. All right, let's see what we got here. Mixuko. I have flown a Mixuko. When you reduce throttle quickly, it yaws slightly. So where does yaw come from on a copter, right? Yaw comes from the counter torque, right? Every motion has an equal and every action has an equal and opposite reaction, right? That's Newton's second law, I believe. Is that correct? And what that means is that when a motor is spinning this way, it's creating a counter torque the opposite way, and that's where we get yaw from on our copters, because unlike a tricopter, which tilts a motor to actually push the copter in a given direction, we don't have that with flat quadcopters. So if you are chopping the throttle and you're getting a yaw effect, what that means is that the motors are not spinning down equally. One of the motors that's spinning one way is spinning down slower, so as a result, it is spinning faster, and that means that there is a net torque on the copter, and that ultimately is something that the PID loop should be taking care of. If the PID loop is not taking care of it, then we got to deal with that with tuning or by looking at the mechanical stuff. So let's take a look. Now, yaw I gain, it's interesting that you tried to fix this with yaw I gain because I think that yaw I gain is the wrong tool here. I gain is generally a relatively slow acting thing, the I term. We say that I term looks to the past. The goal of the I term is to is to find all the places in the past that the P term didn't quite get the job done and compensate for them going forward. Okay, so the I term is always working over a relatively large window, whereas the P term is focused on the right now. I'm going to fix it right. The idea of the P term, think of the P term like this. You ever hear stories about guys working on an auto assembly line, and the assembly line is moving so fast, and they're not allowed to stop the line? This was actually, I heard an NPR story on This American Life about this. Back in the days when American auto manufacturing was terrible, one of the reasons it was terrible was that they had this idea that you could not stop the line. If you stop the line, you're in big trouble. You're fired. You're out of here. And so cars would go by, and they had to do so many cars an hour, right? And that means that if they didn't quite get all the bolts in the door, all the screws holding the door on, just keep going. And cars were going out the line, and they had all these problems. And that's kind of what the P term is like. In this time slice right now, the P term will attempt to do whatever it needs to do to correct the error that is occurring and reduce the error to 0. But if it doesn't quite succeed, who cares? It's on to the next time slice. And that's what the I term is for. The I term says, hey, P gain, you didn't quite correct the error. You didn't quite correct the error. And then the I term sort of fixes that going forward. So the I term is operating over a relatively large window. And what that means is that if we're doing something very rapid, like we're chopping the throttle, boom, I chopped the throttle, the copter yaws to the left. The I term can't respond fast enough to deal with that. So I gain isn't going to fix that unless we raise I gain to such a preposterously high level. As the I gain goes up, the I term does have an effect over a shorter and shorter window, to the point where if we raise the I gain high enough, we'll even get I term oscillation, right? But then the copter, if you raise the I gain to the point where it's operating over a very short time window, the whole copter is going to fly terribly in general, and the I term is sort of doing the P term's job, and that's not what it's for. So if you have a situation like this where you chop the throttle, and the copter yaws to the left quickly, I would be raising the P gain, not the I gain. So let's take a look at this log and see what we come up with. I'm just going to look at the log here, and I'm going to look at what your, look at what your yaw P gain is. Your yaw P gain is 7.5, and your yaw I gain is super high. It's 70. So with a yaw I gain this high, that may actually be causing your problem. I don't know. A yaw I gain of 70 means that if there is any, the higher the I gain, right, it's going to make the I term more responsive, but also in a sense less responsive. I feel that I'm explaining this badly, and I apologize for that, but I'm gonna try and get the concept out anyway, even if though the explanation isn't perfect. The higher the I gain is, the more the I term will sort of respond, and it can get more responsive, but it also makes it sort of stickier, if you will, in that a very high I gain will cause the I term to rise to a very high value, and then when the situation changes, it can sort of hold that value longer. So perhaps what's happening is that when you're in forward flight, the copter has a right yaw tendency for some reason, and the I gain accrues a value that counteracts that tendency. So the copter is pulling to the right, and the I term is pulling to the left, right? Right? And then when you chop the throttle, for whatever reason, the pull to the right tendency goes away, but the I term is still like, I'm pulling to the left so hard, and it doesn't counteract itself. It doesn't decay fast enough. So this I gain feels really high. I think it's way higher than it needs to be, and I think it's likely if you're ever turning and the copter feels like after you center the yaw stick, the copter has the tendency to kind of pull out of the turn. And what you find yourself doing is you push the yaw stick to the right, the copter turns, you center the yaw stick, the turn is supposed to be over, but the copter is kind of pulling out of the turn, and you have to push it. No, finish the, yeah. That's maybe excess I gain on yaw. So I would think about lowering this. I think you've raised this to try and fix the problem, but I would take it back down. And I would focus on raising the yaw P gain. For a fast-moving situation like you're describing, yaw P gain is probably the right choice. let's take a quick look at your log and see if we can find a scenario where it happens and actually dive into what's happening in the actual turn. I cannot open your file. Your file is an AVI file, and Blackbox Log Viewer doesn't like it. And in order to view it, I'm going to need to run it through WinFF, which I'm not going to do here on the live stream. Red Rotor, ROSD, haha, yay. That is super loud. I hope that wasn't super loud for you. Let's see. Boy, it's tiny. It's a tiny yaw to the left, isn't it? Yeah, so in general, here's what I would say. This is my advice. Work up yaw P gain, not yaw I gain, and see if that fixes it. This is exactly the kind of situation that the P term is going to be very good at dealing with. And reduce the yaw I gain back to something closer to the default. That's my recommendation. Let us know if it works. Yeah, sorry it's loud. I do have the output of the live stream set to a low value, so I hope that it wasn't too loud overall. Sorry if it was too loud. Yeah, that was really maxed. Let's see if I can turn it down even a tiny bit more. Let's try to prevent that from happening. Okay, next. That was 2090. Let's do 2095. The pulsing of the motors and the gyros. Yeah, so this is a gyro glitch. This is a gyro glitch, 100%. So we're seeing it in the motors and we're seeing it in the gyros. But just look right here at the gyros. And that is the roll gyro. So that's interesting. That's almost certainly a gyro glitch. Notice that it's a regular spacing, right? So that it's at a certain frequency, and it kind of comes out of nowhere, and it's these sharp values, right? This is, in my opinion, almost certainly a gyro glitch. The answer, if you have something like this, is to soft mount your flight controller as best you can. And the test that you can do if you really want to be sure, because sometimes you soft mount it and you go, well, it didn't work, I'm still having the problem. But soft mounting properly is really hard. You can get, the screws can be transmitting vibration. If the rubber you've used is too hard or too stiff, you won't get good vibration isolation, etc. So what you can do is you could take the flight controller and you can have it just sort of hanging on the wires, just sitting there, not touching the flight control, not touching the frame at all, except that it's just sort of floating there from the wires. And if you care to do that and spin up your motors, which there's plenty of reasons why you wouldn't want to do that. But if you do that and you spin up your motors, you will probably find that the problem goes away. If you do that and the problem doesn't go away, then it's time to replace your board. You've just got a glitchy gyro. The fact that we only see this on the roll axis, a little bit on the pitch axis too, but not, well, no, a little bit on the yaw axis too. So the fact that it's happening on all three axes does mean that it could be a real-world vibration coming through. But the sudden sharpness of it like this, that's really characteristic of what a gyro glitch looks like. Christian, you can find I just did a search for KISS PID lookup, maybe, and it's right here on flyduino.net, or here user shared PIDs. That's it. Yeah, user shared PIDs. KISS user shared PIDs. Just a little Google search and you'll find it. Yeah, that's right, Craig. The regularity of these intervals, you have to ask yourself, in real life, what on the copter could be going tick, 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 like that? It's not impossible, but it's unlikely. It's really likely that this is and the thing is, when I say gyro glitch, people think, well, I've got a bad gyro, so do I need a new gyro? The thing is that with the filtering we're doing, we've got these super high performance firmwares now. Betaflight, it's filtering less. It's getting unbelievable levels of performance out of the copters that we never could get before. The same with BLHeli-S. BLHeli-S makes the motors super responsive. But the problem is that we're now responding to things that we would have used to never seen. And so that's where these things come out. So we may have to soft mount. You could always just go back to an older version of Betaflight or Cleanflight, and the copter will fly worse, but you won't have these glitches. So it's your call. I wouldn't, obviously. So I think you need to soft mount this. And if you're already soft mounted, you need to figure out if you could be soft mounting better. And if you really soft mount, or if you float the flight controller and you still see this problem, then it's time to replace the board. This could also theoretically be electrical noise. I think that's less likely, but theoretically it could be electrical noise. What happens is not so much that electrical noise or interference gets into the board, but what happens is that electrical noise and interference raises the noise floor essentially of the gyro, so that the glitches like this come out. You could try adding a capacitor to your PDB across the positive and negative battery leads, or across the ESC pads, if that's what you prefer. That may help, but in general, I think vibration isolation is the best answer. All right, that was a quick one. Let's do the next one. We've got oscillations on P and D. Let's take a look. Oh, well, that's one way to do it. 16585. Do we have a video? Oh, here's the video. Got it. Download the video. And let's clean out the Blackbox folder, or the download folder. And we'll get the Blackbox log as well. Sorry, RC Flyer. What did I miss? Like I said, I'm trying to work through these logs without getting too distracted. I know I'm prone to get distracted. I would just answer y'all's questions for 2 hours and not get any of these video responses done. So if I'm ignoring the chat a little bit, that's on purpose, and that's just so I can. The people have been waiting forever for me to get to their logs. I am going to do another live stream. I'm going to keep. I mean, I don't promise that it'll be tomorrow, but if I'm not going to get through all of these today, and I am going to do another one. I'm going to try and get them done, you know, every couple days in order to get this cleared out. If you want to try and ask again, I'll do my best. Okay. Yeah, if it seems like I'm being a little bit disrespectful to you guys in the chat by ignoring you, I'm trying to be respectful to the guys who have submitted videos and have been waiting for weeks for me to get to them. So I hope you understand. 16.585, if my memory is correct, which it may not be. Oh, and I may have the, is it the right, which, if you guys give me a log with multiple flights in it, do tell me which flight I'm supposed to be looking at. In this case, I guess it's easy, there's only one. Why are we not? There we go. Do I use foam pads? Yeah, you mean foam landing pads, like Lumineer cells? I used those once. I got a set of them with my QAVR, and I tried them, and I like them. I like being able to set my copter down on a table, or God forbid on my car, without scratching up the car, or set it down on a surface that's slightly slanted and not have it just go and slide down. But the problem is that after very, very few landings, they started tearing off. At which point, what am I gonna? I gotta kind of peel off the bottom and peel off that adhesive is crazy strong, so it's hard to get off. I would go through a set of those. I'd go through those almost as fast as I'd go through props, and so I was just like, screw it, it's not worth it. So that's the answer. But I almost always land on grass. So, is it possible for my I gains to be higher than my P gains? Probably not. I mean, it depends on the scaling, but probably not. Why are we not? Can I? There we go. So we are out of sync. Let me check that I think I might have got the sync wrong. See, I said 16.585. No, that's right. 16.5. I think it feels like it's a little bit off. It feels like it jumps up correctly, but it feels like it is... Hang on. Huh. I really wish I could see it freaking moving while I was bumping it. It's really frustrating that it doesn't do that. So now it's up. Damn it. Well, we're a little bit close. We're a little bit close. So we got some jello here in the high def camera. Again, take a look here. There. That's a sign of excess vibration. It could be that the camera is it could be that the camera is just needs more vibration isolation, but with this amount of vibration, it seems like you may have excess vibration in the copter. If we look at the gyros, let's see what we see. Yeah, that's where you're throttled. Yeah, that's a lot of vibration. You're filtering. You've even got a little bit of extra filtering. This is more filtering than default at 80. It depends on the some versions had 290. 290 might have had 80 by default, but it's a little bit of extra filtering, and it's still, we're getting a lot of vibration here. So you got a lot of vibrations. I think excess vibrations. I would want to bring that down. Your copter is, are you like flying 6-inch props? No, I see. Props 9 by 5, 9.5 by 4.5. I see. These are big props. That explains the jello. So if you're going to fly big props like this, you're going to need to do a lot of work on vibration isolation. The advantage of small props like 5-inch and 4-inch props is that they have less mass and they spin faster, so the vibrations are higher frequency because you're at a higher RPM, which means that the vibrations are more easily filtered, and you don't have to do a lot of crazy work to get the vibration out of your system. With 9-inch props, I would definitely be hand balancing the props or buying high quality carbon fiber props, for example, if possible. Obviously, not everybody feels like that's worth it. But if you don't want to hand balance your props, buying carbon fiber props, sorry for bumping the mic, will is one way to go about it. But you should definitely be hand balancing the props, and then you're definitely going to need to take some more extreme steps to get the vibrations out of the high def cam, like rubber bobbins or something like that. Hard mounting is just not going to work with 9-inch props. So that's the reason for the excess vibration. You may also need more filtering. It's going to make the PID loop less responsive, but on the other hand, 9-inch props are not super responsive anyway, so maybe it doesn't matter. Okay. How should we proceed with tuning? The answer to how you should proceed with tuning, I think, is a tough one. Because I'm not sure what flight characteristics you're going for here. With the 9-inch props, you're probably not going for like hyper acro flying, and you're probably, if you were going for hyper acro flying, these props are not going to be responsive enough to really do that. So you're probably going for more of a smooth flyer, a cruiser, if you will. And the advantage of that, is that since it's going to be easier to tune because your flight envelope is going to be less extreme. you can see here that your D term is going absolutely bonkers. This is terrible. It's because of your vibration, of course. It's just going absolutely bonkers. And if we look at your motors, do you see how the D term is just going back and forth, and the magnitude is quite high. So it's way over the line. And if we look at your motors, let's see. There's with filter with smoothing on, but with smoothing off, look what your motors are doing. Your motors are going to this is insane. This is no good at all. So you see how this motor is maxing out and just going up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down all the time. Anytime you raise the throttle, this is really bad. Yeah. So you definitely want to tune the copter to balance the props, make sure the props and motors are as balanced as they can be. But then you're definitely going to need, I think, maybe more filtering, more gyro filtering. Not that. Or, yeah. Take gyro soft hertz as low as maybe 60. And then, but maybe leave gyro at 80 and take D term down to 80. Or maybe even go something like 60 for gyro and 80 for D term. But you gotta clean this up. First balance the props and see if this cleans up. Then start adding filtering and see if it cleans up. Your D gain, your D is not very high. So the fact that you got this much noise with your D gain not very high, you got too much vibration. So if there's one thing I could tell you to do to clean up your tune, it would be to get rid of the vibration and then somehow clean up the D term so that you're not getting this crazy oscillation in your motor outputs, because that's not good for your motors and it's not good for your flight characteristics. Okay. Yeah, the reason it's not coming down on fire is probably because he's only pulling 6 amps. Oh, oops, I accidentally left this up. Let me just close that real quick. Freeze frame. Yeah, he's probably, I mean, these are 12 amp ESCs, is 9.5. He's probably only pulling 6 or 10 amps. The motors are just not, and they're 2208 motors, so it's just not soaking that much, you know, they can just take it. Somebody asked about the Horus. You're right, the Horus is shipping, and presumably the NDA has been lifted. I will not have a video coming up on the Horus because, and this is where you guys can hate me, although you guys won't hate you. The reason that you guys will hate me is because I am not as super duper excited about every new thing that comes down the pike as some people might wish I would. So that manifested itself when I flew KISS, because I didn't have the enthusiasm about the product that would lead me to overcome the roadblocks, right? And then I made a video that I said I didn't like it, and people didn't like that about it. It was one of the reasons people didn't like it, I think, is that they wished I would have been more enthusiastic, because people want to hear me talk about this stuff. I was not super enthusiastic about the Horus when I received it. The build quality of the Horus that I got was good. It's a solid radio. It's people who feel like the Taranis feels like too much of a toy are going to be happy that the Horus feels solid. It's heavy. It's not too heavy, but it's definitely got some presence in your hands. There were a couple things about it that sort of turned me off about it. One is I kind of didn't like, it's wider than the Taranis, and I kind of didn't like that it was wider, and my hands felt like a sort of an uncomfortable compromise between a tray radio and a handheld radio. The other thing is that so it doesn't ship with OpenTX on it. The Taranis ships with OpenTX on it, and I like that. The Horus ships with its own firmware on it, and you can install OpenTX on it. The OpenTX guys have been working their butts off, but when it came and it didn't have OpenTX on it, I was like, oh man, you guys are going a different direction. I'm disappointed that you're not thinking the same way I am, that you don't want OpenTX. And they're trying to make it more accessible, I think. People find the Taranis to be a little bit inaccessible, but I didn't like that. Then there were a couple other small things about the mechanics of it. I didn't feel like they had been designed properly for the neck strap. The neck strap hangs from the cover, the switch cover for the on-off switch, and when you sorry, hold on one second. Hold on one second. The neck strap hangs from the little switch cover that covers the on-off switch. And for me, at least, when I hung it from the neck strap, the thing flipped open, and it didn't feel like it had been designed to be used with a neck strap, which seemed a little odd. But okay. The other thing is that it seems like that hinge is gonna. It doesn't seem good to hang a radio off the hinge, but okay. Anyway, so these are things I didn't talk about when I was under NDA because I don't want to badmouth the product before it releases. It has only been a few months since I got the product. I don't think that's changed, but the other thing is that I didn't receive the radio for free, and I'm not offended by that. The company that supplied it to me said, we got some of these units, we had to buy them, and we're going to sell them to you at our cost. We're not going to mark them up, try and make a profit, but if you want one, you got to pay us for them. And so the retail on it is like $500, and I paid some significant fraction of that to get it. And when I got it, and I wasn't immediately bowled over by it, I was like, I'd rather have that money and no Horus and just keep flying my Taranis. So that's my opinion. My opinion of the Horus is that with a retail of $500, you got to really want it, that form factor. And yeah, it's got Hall effect gimbals, and they're very nice gimbals. But I like my junky old Taranis. I like the fact that I can throw my Taranis in the bottom of my flight bag and not worry about scratching up that gorgeous LCD screen. And I don't mind the fact that Taranis has a kind of cruddy LED screen, right? I don't know. There you go. That's my opinion. So I don't have the Horus anymore. I found another person who wanted to do more thorough research and development and playing with it. I just was not super excited about it out of the box. If I had been given it for free, then I might have been more excited. But since I had to pay out several $100s to have the privilege of having it, I was like, well, I got other things I could be doing with that money. So there you go. Yes, Robert, that's about the price I paid for it, without going into too many details. And again, I'm not offended. I wasn't like, well, I don't know if you know, I'm a big shot on YouTube, sir. If you want me to have it, you need to send it to me. I was like, okay, I'll give it a shot. But then I got it, and for, $400, I wasn't immediately blown away, and there's other things I could be doing with that money. So, there you go. Taranis for me. Taranis for me. Um, I use the Taranis. I've never actually Here's the thing. I never transitioned my copters over to the Horus because I went to set up my sticky arming switch on the Horus, and guess what? The stock firmware doesn't have logical switches anymore. It doesn't even have a proper mixer. The stock firmware, and again, to be clear, you can put OpenTX on it. You can put OpenTX on it and have all the functionality back. But the stock firmware doesn't even have a proper mixer. All it has is pre-made mixes. Or at least all it had at the time that I had it, which was several months ago and may have changed. Grain of salt, right? Caveat supply. It just had pre-made mixes like elevator to flaps, aileron to rudder. If you want to just make your own mixes, no, can't do it, at least not as far as I could tell. And so immediately I was like, okay, let's bind a copter to it and go fly and see how it is. Immediately, the very most basic thing I do with my copter, which is the sticky arming switch, I couldn't do it. And I said, well, and then I was like, okay, well, I could flash OpenTX to it. But then, that's not, I don't know. And I was like, well, screw it. I'll just use my Taranis. And there you go. So that's it. Yeah, Dan, that's right. Be offended. That's why I do this. If Obsidian, if you can get D up to 60 and get rid of your prop wash and your motors don't come down hot, more power to you. Raising P usually does not stop prop wash, but if that worked for you, more power to you. D gains in the 50s usually would be unusual, Tommy. But again, if you're flying with D gains in the 50s and your motors are cool or warm but not hot, more power to you. Okay. Okay. Put that back where it belongs. Hang on. All right, yeah. So that's the Taranis. Somebody asked me something else about something else, but I don't remember what it was. So we're going to go on to the next one. That was 2098. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 2102. Help me with this log. Let's see what we got. More than 3 blade props. I have not flown 4 or 6 blade props. I'm only flying 3 blade, trying to get a good tune out of them. A big reason for that is that I fly high kV motors so far. I've been, in the last, say, 6 months, I've been really exploring what high kV motors do and how they fly. And I just don't feel like a 4 blade prop could ever really be a good fit for a 2600 kV motor. I am going to be doing several builds coming up with 2300 kV-ish motors, and I may try 4 blade props on them. In general, when you get more props, more props like 3 blade, 4 blade, 6 blade, you get better tracking in corners, better grip, if you will. But the prop is also slightly less responsive because it has more drag, and it's also usually will have a lower top end because it doesn't spin as fast and have as much pitch speed. Although that varies a little bit because you could get more thrust. You get more thrust out of them. So, yeah, a lot of the guys in San Antonio were flying with quad blades, and they certainly weren't slow. So, that's for sure. Log for Joshua.txt. Let's see what we got. This one is just asking for general tuning advice. So let's see what we can do about that. 5045, 545 bullnose. Eachine Falcon. Ugh. Okay, so I have a review coming up on the Eachine Falcon. They sent me one to review. This is the Falcon 210. You say without tilted motor mounts. Does the Falcon 180 have tilted motor mounts? Hang on. It does. So if you so I've heard from people who say that the Falcon 180 is decent. The Falcon 210, it could be decent, but the ESCs are so terrible that it is terrible. So if this is the Falcon 210, if this is the Falcon 210, I don't even want to look at the log because there's nothing I could do to make that thing fly decent. And I tried. I wanted to make a video, say, you could buy this $220 ready to fly from Banggood, and if you use my PIDs, I'm such a good tuner that it'll fly okay. Like, I didn't expect it to fly great, but I thought, what a great video that would make for my channel, and how nice it would be for the people who bought the cheapo ready to fly Banggood quadcopter that they could get a good flight experience out of it. But I'm sorry to say, the ESCs are so freaking bad. When I was trying to find min throttle, here's what happens. You're raising it one step at a time. You finally hit the point where the ESC starts, right? And it goes, and I'm like, what is this, a freaking turbine engine? Right? It doesn't go tick, tick, it goes, like, and I've only changed, like, literally 1 microsecond. I tapped the up arrow 1 time. And I'm like, okay, that's how responsive the ESC is. No, terrible. So Boko, if you have, I'm going to look at your log, but if you have the 210, what you got to do is you got to replace the ESCs with spend $45 to $60 buying a good set. Because here's the thing. It's got the SP Racing F3. It's got a good video it's got a decent video transmitter in it. Got MWOSD. Nobody could complain about that. The frame is actually pretty decent, and I have a full video review coming up where you can hear me say these things in a little more detail, but since you're on the live stream, you can hear them now. That copter is not a total piece of junk. It just has really, really terrible ESCs and a really bad camera. So if you could buy the Eachine Falcon 210 for $100 and put $60 into a new set of ESCs and $35 into a new camera, you actually could have potentially a decent copter. I'm assuming the motors aren't complete garbage because, how hard is it to wind a motor and stick a bearing in? But the ESCs and the camera are just total garbage, unfortunately. So let's take a look at your log, and let's hope you've got the Falcon 180, which I've heard is actually pretty decent. The 210 is not decent. It's bad. It's really bad. I'm just going to pick your longest flight here. Let's find a flight, 255 here. Did you tell me a flight number? You did not. Okay, so I'm just going to pick the longest one. And I'm going to look at your gyros first and see how noisy the gyros are with smoothing off. Gyros are not super noisy. Interestingly, the yaw gyro is the cleanest one. The other two are a little bit noisy, but not super noisy. You're probably running Cleanflight 1.12. You certainly, again, if it's the 210 with the stock ESCs, just don't even bother putting Betaflight on it or anything. It's just, they're just so bad. But you could probably get better performance, better tuning by going to Betaflight 3.0 if you want to take the plunge. Or even Cleanflight 1.13 will give you the ability to tune the... Cleanflight 1.12 has you locked at 1 kilohertz, and it doesn't have a gyro soft filter. It only has the hardware filter. So you have very limited options to tuning the gyro filter. Whereas even Cleanflight 1.13 will give you the options to tune the gyro filter with a little more granularity. But if you're working on the standard ESCs, I wouldn't even bother of the 210. So nothing crazy bad here, though. Let's take a look at your PIDs. We'll look at pitch first. So with the smoothing off, we can see your D term is going bonkers. So your D gain may be too high. Let's just take the D term out of here and see if we can get some sense of what's going on with the P term. A lot of oscillation on the P term as well. It's just going up and down, up and down. A lot of high frequency noise too, which is surprising. You don't normally see high frequency noise on the P term. It feels like the copter needs more filtering, perhaps because we're seeing this high frequency noise on the P term. Yeah, I agree, RC Flyer. And the thing is, they put these terrible, and I mean really terrible ESCs on, and it's a real shame because the copter could be really half decent. And it's not like, I mean, how much are these ESCs? You could raise the price of the copter by $20, and instead of putting a $5 ESC on it, for which they probably paid $3, I'm being very generous here, you could put a copter, an ESC that at retail runs, say, $10 or $11, and still have okay performance. You got a lot of noise here on the P term. This little back and forth jigglies here. It's really unusual to see the P term doing that, but I'm just not sure how much I can read into this because it's been so long since I analyzed Cleanflight 1.12 that it's possible that that's just something that you see here. It feels like this needs more filtering, and it's hard to assess. It's hard to assess the tune too much. Let's see. You do a roll here. Let's see what happens during the roll. We get a push in, out, in, and then as you return to center, yeah. No crazy oscillation. Here we're getting some oscillation. See, yeah, look at this oscillation here. You haven't really moved the stick at all. Oh, that was a roll, and I'm looking at pitch, sorry. But anyway, look at this oscillation here. I'm going to play it forward at half speed. So we do the roll, and then we see, this is half speed again. Roll ends, punch the throttle, drop the throttle. Notice that when you drop the throttle, we now see whizz, whizz, whizz. Right? What's doing that? We drop the throttle. Why are we seeing these crazy oscillations when we drop the throttle? And the answer is that probably, it's bad ESCs or there's just nothing you can do to tune this out. So I'm sorry, I may be prejudiced because I think I know what copter you're flying. I don't actually think there's a lot you could do to improve the tune, and we could try to dive in and figure out what to do, but I don't think the changes you're going to make are really going to matter if you're flying the 210 for sure. So there you go, Boca 10. Wish I could say more, better things. ESCs in the 20 amp range. Quad McFly always recommends the Acon Bolt Light from Buddy RC, which is where I suggest you buy them. You could always do XM20. They seem reasonably solid, and they're always available. They're never out of stock. You can get them a million places. The XS ESCs, the XS20, are also pretty solid. Little B just came out with their BLHeli S 20 and 30 amp ESCs. Really spoiled for choice these days. If you really want to know, though, go look at miniquadtestbench.com and look at what his results are. Miniquad Test Bench is a great place to find out what good ESCs are. I've been flying the Cicada 20 amps. They seem to have done all right, although I did smoke one, so it was that my fault or the ESC's fault, I don't know. But they seem to perform reasonably well. I just don't. If an ESC is bad, I would tell you, but I just figuring out which ESCs are good. You fly them, and it's like, yeah, it seems like it's flying pretty good. And it's only really at the very edges of the tuning envelope that you see the differences. And I just don't do enough rigorous A/B comparison to tell you that these ESCs are good and these are bad. So as long as they don't have some kind of crazy bug that makes your copter fall out of the sky, then I guess they're okay. Just buy based on price and availability. But go check out MiniQuad Test Bench. He'll tell you what to get in that respect. 2102. Now we're going to go on to 2106. There's a bug flying about my head. Oscillations in hover. That's interesting. Plus 1155. Okay, let's have a look. Any good reversible ESCs? All BLHeli ESCs are reversible. Just take your pick. They're all reversible, Ron. You just go into BLHeli Suite and you set them to reversible mode. You're good to go. You need to do it also in Cleanflight, and there's other basic safety checks you need to make sure. Because of course, if the ESCs are reversible, but the Cleanflight isn't, then when if things are wrong, you can end up going full throttle in a direction you didn't intend to when you meant to throttle down. So again, don't screw it up. Test it out really carefully. But the idea that you need to buy reversible ESCs these days, they'll all do it. Okay, let's go ahead and download these files. By the way, how awesome is diff? How awesome is diff? For those of you who don't know, this is a new command. It came, I think it came in Betaflight 3. I'm not actually 100% sure. But what diff does, if you type diff into the command line, it dumps out only the command line options that you have changed from default, which means instead of backing up the whole CLI dump with all this stuff that you didn't change, you just type diff and you only get the stuff you changed. It's so much simpler than digging through a whole command line dump to see what's different. And the other thing is, if there's some default option that you didn't touch, and then later it goes away or later it changes, your diff won't carry over the default from the previous version. Your diff will only have the stuff that you explicitly changed. So if you're not familiar with diff, no, you should always back up. Here, I'll show you. Pardon me. You should always back up your configurations by doing a command line dump. If you don't do that, you should be doing it. And if we take a look here, you can actually see, here's my archive of all my dumps, and you can see, right, I've got the dumps from all my copters, different Betaflight versions. I've even got the hexes saved, although it's not really necessary anymore. So anytime you get a configuration done, you should dump that out to a text file. But the nice thing is that now you can just diff and you don't have to do the whole thing. You just get the stuff you changed. It's really good. So definitely check that out. What does diff show defaults do, Graham? All right, let's have a look here. What we've got here is oscillations during hover. And before I bring in the Blackbox log, let's just take a look at the video. We can't take a look. I don't know why it doesn't want to play the video. All right, let's try and play the video the traditional way. Or maybe it was just, no, I don't think it was playing. Was I wrong? Well, anyway, whatever. We don't seem to have any sound. That's okay. You guys will appreciate that, I'm sure. So the problem that we're dealing with is oscillations noticeable in hover. At around the 1 minute mark, you can see me hovering. Vibrations are there throughout the vid, but more time hovering at that point. Let's look at the 1 minute mark roughly. So I do see the oscillations or vibrations that you're talking about. It's not obvious to me whether those are vibrations from the props going into the camera or whether they are a tuning related thing. One of the things that if you have vibrations from the props, then if you're holding the throttle steady, the vibrations should be fairly consistent. But what I see your copter doing is it looks like it's kind of going shutter, shutter, shutter. And that's more likely to be a tuning related thing, but it's hard to say for sure. Let's take a look at the Blackbox log. Again, is the video is working. Okay, I was just being dumb. Let's open up the Blackbox log, and you're saying the sync time is 11:55. Thank you so much for that. Whoa, oh, spilled Coke. Hang on. Nope, keyboard's fine. All good. This is why I always have towels. Okay. Oh, problem averted. Sync time 11:55. And log is, oh yeah, you told me the sync time, but you didn't tell me which log it was, did you? Did you? Well, I'm sure we'll figure it out. So I don't think it's that one. That one doesn't look correct. That one's only 54 minutes. I know we're over a minute. It's got to be this one. 1 minute 21. Yeah, pretty close. So now we'll go around the 1 minute mark and look at that hover and see what we can see. So here's the point where you're hovering and we have the oscillations. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at your gyros and I'm going to see if we see the oscillations in the gyros. And we really should, but let's just see what we see. Yeah. And what we should see is that at the moment when we see the camera because the camera looks like it's a little steady and then it kind of goes wub bub bub, and then it's steady and then it kind of goes bub bub bub. We should see a change in the gyro magnitude. Maybe we could even change the zoom level, perhaps. Can I change the zoom level to 200? Let's find out. Patrick, you're very welcome. That's I hope it helps you out. You turn on and off smoothing by pressing the S key, as I learned earlier in this live stream. So, and let's play it forward at like 50%. You can see that twitching right there? That's a pretty big twitch at 50%. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, boom, boom. So, what happened there? We do a roll move? I guess we must have. So I do see that some stuff is coming out on the gyros. Look right here. Do you see that the gyros are very small? And then as we get to the point where those vibrations are coming out, the gyros do get a little bigger. But I got to tell you, the kind of big twitches that we're seeing, I don't see that in the gyro. And I think you guys will agree. I don't see that. Look how big these twitches are. Doom, right? That's a pretty big twitch. And I just don't, also think about the frequency of that twitch. And I don't mean think, is it 2 hertz or 3 hertz? But I mean, think about the frequency. When the copter goes, dug, 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 right? That's a low frequency thing, right? And here, if we look at the frequency here, this is a very high frequency stuff coming through, just based on, look at the uppy downy, how fast it's going past, right? So I don't think what you're seeing here in the camera is coming out in the gyros. I think you have a loose FPV camera lens or a loose camera mount. That's what I'm going to go with. It's not a tuning issue. I think your FPV camera is having an issue because I just don't see anything in the gyro traces that looks like the kind of clear sort of twitches or jounces that I'm seeing in the camera. Okay, that's what I'm going to go with. All right, that's what I'm going to go with. And I would never laugh at your flying. No. Everybody's flying. Everybody was bad once. And you can, if you go on my, oh man, I don't even know what I would search for. How about this? If you go to my channel and you search for, let's see if we can find an old video. Here we go. Strider Mini Quad Tuning Progress. No music on the live stream. I think that's actually licensed music anyway. Don't laugh at my flying, okay? This is my tuning progress. Let's see how it goes. Oh, sorry. Yep, I'm tuning, guys. Anyway, I'm not going to make you watch the whole video, but yeah. Oh, man, look how uncoordinated that turn is. Look, I'm not even pointing the right direction. We were all bad pilots once. Or worse pilots, anyway. Hopefully we're getting better. Nobody's got room to make fun of it, though. All right, that was 2106. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 15 minutes. Can I do 3 of them in 15 minutes? I don't think so. This is Martin555. He's a very active participant on the thread. I recognize you, Martin. I recognize your thumbnail image for sure. 4X Racer Star ESCs. Weren't we just talking about Racer Stars? RC Flyer, you were talking about him. How about that? Is that a coincidence? Probably. Nanomex, how long ago was that video? I'll tell you. That was posted May 8th, 2015. So, about a year and a half ago. It's been a rapid progress, a rapid progression in my flying. So, yeah. It comes if you go dig through my channel, you can find older videos of me flying really, really timidly, and then you could watch the progression if you really wanted to. Okay, Craig. I don't need encouragement to plug my playlist. I guess I always assume that everybody just knows all my stuff, but if you haven't been through my playlists on my channels, check out. I try to organize things into playlists to help you find what you're looking for better. But one of my most popular ones is the how to fly a quadcopter / racing drone is what it's currently called. If you don't know how to fly in acro mode, or if you're just starting to learn how to fly, you should definitely check this out. A lot of people have found it helpful. Okay. Racer Star 20 amp ESCs. The motors spin up and respond nicely via the Motors tab. When you arm, instant throttle to 100%. So I don't have a black box log here, so it's just a request for advice. So I'm going to give you the advice. The first thing I would do is I would check the channel output on the radio to see if the radio is actually sending the throttle to 100%. So we got to just sort of trace this through from start to finish. Is the radio sending 100%? Look in the receivers tab and see if Cleanflight is seeing the channel at 100%. So most likely what's happening is that you've got an input problem where Cleanflight feels, or Betaflight feels, that the channel is going to 100%, but you have the tools to see that for yourself. So there's the channel output screen, the channel monitor, whatever they call it on the 9X. Look at it. Is the throttle at 0 or is the throttle at 100? If the throttle's at 0, okay, that's correct. Then move to the receiver tab in Cleanflight. Is the throttle channel at 0 or is it at 100? Okay, that's correct, right? And then we could start looking at in Blackbox at RC command and the motor outputs. And the thing is, if so, let's say you could work from the other direction. You go into Blackbox and you see that the motor outputs are at 100%. Now, the motors always respond to the PIDs. So if the motors are at 100%, one of the PID sums is telling the motors to go to 100%. So now you're going to look at the roll, the pitch, and the yaw PID sum, and you're going to look to see if one of their PID sums is maxed out or all of them are maxed out. And you're going to look to see if it's the P, the I, or the D. And the PID sum always responds to the gyro, right? So I think this actually, I'm really glad you got me talking about this, because I think this understanding really opens the door to better troubleshooting. Let's work it front to back. The transmitter sends a channel value. The channel value is received by the receiver. That value is sent to Cleanflight or Betaflight to the flight controller via S-Bus or PWM or PPM. That value is interpreted by the PID loop. The PID loop interprets the channel values to see whether the copter should be rolling left, right, pitching forward, down, spinning up the motors, up or down. Thank you for that. Do not show that again. Okay, so the PID loop acts on the input of the from the transmitter, and it acts on the gyro data, and those two things together get cooked up and they are sent out to the motors via the mixer. Okay, you could work that front or back, but anytime you're trying to troubleshoot like the motor is spinning up, well, it's got to be either that you've got an input that's telling the motor to spin up, or you've got something coming from the gyro and the PID loop interacting to make the motor spin up. So it's just a matter of digging through that using the tools available to you to see where the bad data is getting introduced. And that's the answer. Settings not in sync, you got to look at what setting is out of sync. So you go to the BLHeli overview page, and you're going to look at all the settings. And I'm not going to plug in a copter and show you, but in my hang on, I might have this one. In this one, I should have a screenshot I can show you. There it is. So this is the page you go to. If you're getting settings not in sync, what you got to do is you got to connect up and read your config and look at this screen. This is the ESC overview screen in BLHeli, and look at what settings are out of sync. Okay, what's changing and making them be out of sync. Okay, so that's the first step. And here you can see the out of sync values are highlighted in blue. Okay, so then from there you can start to try to figure out why they're getting out of sync. If the motors are going to 100%, the fact that it works correctly from the motors tab means that it's not a calibration or a throttle. It's not an endpoint issue. So it's probably something to do with the PID loop or the receiver. All right. There you go. KISS does Blackbox, but I think you have to have the KISS OSD for it to work. It parallels with the OSD and it reads the OSD data. My favorite right now, since we're talking about it, my favorite right now is the Fury F3 from, and it's not 2Dog 4C, 2Dog RC. And I like this one because it's got the 6,000 gyro. Not the blog. Come on. Where's the product? I'll link to my own video. It's got a built-in SD card, and it's got a 6,000 gyro, and it's got a pretty decent layout. The only thing that and of course I have something to complain about. The only thing that I have to complain about this board is that it doesn't power the receiver from USB. So you have to plug in a battery if you want to do any work with your receiver, and that's a little unfortunate. But right now, this is my favorite board, and I'm sorry to say that, because the F303 has been my favorite board for so long. It feels a little bit like I'm cheating on my old girlfriend. But right now the F303 doesn't have one with an onboard SD card, and the ability to do Blackbox logging for somebody like me without having to deal with UART and all that nonsense is so convenient. So that's really nice. I happen to know that the X-Racer has, that FPV model is not resting on their laurels. There are things that they're working on that I can't tell you about. That's not a shocker to you, right? Right? I'm not like revealing any. Did you think they were just sitting there going, no, this one's good. We're not going to make a new board. Of course, they're working on the next board. So at this moment in time, the Fury F3 is if I could just have as many of one flight control board as I wanted, that's the one I would pick. Somewhere race flight person is going, no, pick the Revo, do race flight. I'll get there. I'll get there. But right now, this is my favorite. I can't wait to see what FPV model comes out with next. I actually don't have a whole lot of details, but I said to FPV model, my contact from FPV model, I said to him, "Hey, this Fury F3 board is pretty impressive. You know, what do you got?" And he was like, "Don't worry, don't worry. We got stuff coming." So that's good. Healthy competition is good, right? Absolutely. Okay, so there, Martin, that's my answer to you, such as it is. And I didn't look at a black box, but you didn't submit a black box, so it's all good. And let's see the next one. Martin, 2146. Yeah, here's the thing. F4s are coming. F4s are coming. The F3, F1 is now, as of, I would say, as of Betaflight 3.0. Even in Betaflight 2.9, F1 boards were starting, like Super Expo rates was one of the first things to really start to stress the F1 board. Camera up tilt compensation also stressed the F1 board, but very few people actually used it. Pardon me. Super Expo rates really started to stress the F1 board because of so much calculation. And now with Betaflight 3.0, with the Betaflight PID controller, F1 boards are really feeling it. They just cannot run at even like 4K, 2K. They're having to go to 2K, 2K, or maybe even 2K, 1K. And that for me is a sign that that board is finally run out its lifespan. If you had asked me a year and a half ago, I would have said F1 boards were on the way out. But then Boris just worked his magic and squeezed so much performance out of the F1 board that I'm shocked that NASes have been viable for as long as they have. But they're finally on the way out, in my opinion. Do not buy an F1 board today. Just don't. Not at any price. It's if you have them, don't throw them out. If you're flying them, they still fly fine, but you do not buy one, I would say. And F3 boards, you can see the light at the end of the tunnel for F3 boards, which I'm shocked because the F1 board only just started to become sort of obsolete, and F3 boards should have a good long life, but I think that we're going to see an exponential ramp, especially if you see what the guys at Raceflight are doing. Those guys are looking forward to the F7, which is the next one after the F4, I guess. I don't really know. And you say, well, there's all kinds of processing things that you can do once you have processor cycles to spare. Some people have said, why do we have to set the notch filter manually? Why doesn't the flight controller just sample the gyro data and set the notch filter for us automatically? Well, one reason it doesn't do that is processing cycles. Another conversation that I had with someone was, why are we using these old analog protocols to communicate to the ESCs? You know, why don't we use a more complicated and sophisticated protocol? And yes, people have talked about CAN bus, but there's other things out there that could be used to talk to the ESCs. And the thing is that processing those signals is processor intensive, and we can't do it. But if we had F4s or F7s, all these things open up, and we just, you know, it's the guys who are really pushing the pie in the sky, dreaming, that are going to make that happen. Start PID tuning on the roll or the pitch axis. It kind of doesn't matter. Go watch Skitzo's vlog on tuning. He does one axis at a time. I kind of like to do both axes at once. What I'll do is I'll push the P and the roll and the pitch up together until I start to see oscillations, and then I'll kind of back one of them down and see which one was giving me the oscillations. But you can also tune them separately. You got to tune them both. It doesn't really matter. 2138. Did I miss 2138? Hang on. 2146. Did I do 2144? I certainly don't want to miss anybody. Why did I not get 2138? I'm glad I caught your comment. Okay, let me get 2138. I'm sorry I missed that. I don't know how that happened. The onboard slot does go faster. That's exactly right. You're limited to about one kilohertz logging rate. Depends on how much data you're logging. If you turn on debug logging, you may not even be able to go that fast. But 250 kilobaud is your limit, right? Whereas with a built-in SD card reader, is really no. I mean, it's SPI, so it's like I don't know what's the limit. I think SPI is pretty fast. I think it's like 45 megabits per second. I don't know why I think that. I could be wrong, but SPI is pretty fast. So basically, as fast as the SD card can write. I still only log at 1K logging rate because I think it just makes effective use of the space on your card, and I still have gotten a few dropouts at 2K logging rate even with the built-in SD card reader. And the reason for that is not the SPI interface, but probably the SD card itself. The SD cards are not actually optimized for lots of very small writes. They're optimized for writing in big chunks. So even though it's a class 10 card that can write, 1080p 60 or something, which is really, 30 megabits per second. I don't know what it is. It's a lot. They're not optimized for lots of very small writes. So I still log at 1K even with the built-in one, but it's just nice having the convenience of having it built in. Sharp yaw movement. Yaw to the right, quad drops the back left. And the motor cuts the throttle to 0. Well, so I don't even need to look at your black box to talk about this. Let's just talk about this for a second, because you have interpreted the black box for me and told me what's happening, and you've given me enough information to talk about the problem. So I'm going to skip the black box and let's just talk about it. The motor cuts to 0. Why does the motor cut to 0? Well, what we talked about before is the motors are driven by the PIDs, and in this case, the yaw PIDs are telling 2 of the motors to spin up and 2 of the motors to spin down, right? And so one of the motors is spinning down all the way to 0. If the motor goes to 0 and the motor drops, what it means almost 100% of the time is that your min throttle is too low. The motor should never be able to stop running. The motor should only idle. And if the motor only idles, then as the motor comes down, the PID loop says, okay, that's it, I can't go any lower. And the PID loop adjusts the other 3 motors dynamically to keep them in sync and keep the copter balanced, doing what it needs to do. But if the motor goes to 0 and the arm drops, that means usually min throttle's too low. The copter intends to idle the motor, but the prop actually stops spinning or stutters. Okay, so I hope does that answer the question? 2040, I missed 2040. Sorry, I try and get all of these when they post. I try to add them to this list. I don't know how I miss them sometimes. So, yeah. But it sounds like you've got it, so there you go. Okay, I'm going to leave 21. Sounds like I don't need to go back and get 2140. If there are any others that I missed, definitely message me and I'll move them to the front of the next one. All right, that's going to bring us to 3 o'clock. We've been going for 2 hours, and I have done, which one am I on? Which one did I get up to? 2144? 2146? Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8-ish, 9 maybe. We're going to call that, though. That's 2 hours. I think we're going to call it. Hello from Nassau, Bahamas. Yeah, very nice. Yeah, so to finish up, Nathan, you're going to need to raise your min throttle. And my guideline is that you need at least 15 microseconds between the point where the motor just barely starts spinning and your min throttle. So if the motor spins without stuttering at, say, 1020, I would set min throttle no lower than 1035. You can sometimes get away with it, setting it lower. I know guys who run min throttle 5 microseconds above the spin point, and they don't have any problems. But it just depends very much on your setup and your props and et cetera, et cetera. 15 microseconds is my guideline for the minimum. Depending on your setup, you may need as much as 30 or maybe a little more. But if you're not at least 30 or 40 microseconds above your spin up point, then try raising min throttle and see if that fixes your problem. Well, reworking the PIDs, it depends. I mean, the thing is, anytime the motor needs to go to idle, if min throttle is too low, then the prop may stop and the thing may drop. So changing, for example, your yaw P gain may make the copter try and push the props harder and get more authority out, which may make a motor go down to 0 where it didn't before. That's the thing. Anyway, all right, I'm going to wrap it up. I'm definitely going to do another one of these sooner rather than later. It will not be a week or 2 weeks because I don't have any business trips coming up, and I do have a pretty big stack still. I think at least one more of these, another 2-hour block, and we should be able to make a big dent of these. If I failed to get to yours, I do apologize, or at least acknowledge. They come in hot and fast, and of course I'm very, very busy doing a whole bunch of other things like battery testing and occasionally even getting to go out and fly for fun. So I do appreciate your understanding on that. But we'll have another one soon, and we're going to wrap this one up. Thank you guys for watching, and happy flying.